Nigeria eyes 10% control of Africa's imports. Central Bank of Nigeria engages Caribbean firm on e-Naira project. Nigeria's electricity sector records highest growth, says National Bureau of Statistics. France to work with African partners to deliver 10 million vaccines to Africa. Details of this and more on Business Express. And we're reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. I am Musa Abubakar. Now let's begin with digital currency. The Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, says it has engaged a Barbados-based digital financial technology firm Beat Inc. as technical partners for its e-Naira project due for unveiling before the end of the year. With operations spreading across the Caribbean, Beat utilizes blockchain and distributed ledger technology to facilitate peer-to-peer transactions with mobile money across a suite of Beat's software and mobile applications. Statement signed by the Director of Corporate Communications, Osita Onwasubi, said the firm was chosen through a highly competitive bidding process. He added that it was chosen on its technological competence, efficiency, platform security, interoperability, and implementation experience. Now, dollar near two-week low, investors look to U.S. jobs data for next catalyst. How much is the Naira exchange and for other currencies? Let's find out. The federal government says the strategic objectives of Nigeria's participation in the African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, is to capture 10% of Africa's imports as well as to double the country's export revenue by 2035. The government said it aims to become the preferred supplier of value-added products and services to Africa. The Secretary of the National Action Committee on AfCFTA, Francis Anatogu, who stated this, noted that the strategic objective will be achieved by growing export capacity of every state in the country to $1.2 billion, as well as by focusing on specific product service chains. He added that Nigeria will also grow local demand for new made-in-Nigeria automobiles to 200,000 units and local content to 40% over 5 years. Recently released gross domestic product (GDP) report by the National Bureau of Statistics shows that the Nigerian electricity sector, classified with gas, steam and air conditioning supply, recorded the highest growth by any sector in the country, posting 78.16% year-on-year real GDP growth. The report added that Nigeria's non-oil sector of the economy was largely driven by growth recorded in trade, telecommunications, road transport, electricity, crop production, and food production. Also, on behalf On a half-year basis, the sector grew by 56.58% year-on-year compared to a contraction of 2.78% recorded in the corresponding period of 2020. Meanwhile, when compared to the previous quarter, the sector recorded a growth of 264.23% to a real aggregate of 134.19 billion naira in the second quarter of 2021, as opposed to 36.84 billion naira recorded in the first quarter of 2021. According to PricewaterhouseCoopers, the 2021 Petroleum Industry Act will facilitate Nigeria's economic development by attracting and creating investment opportunities for local and international investors. And to shed more light on how the Petroleum Industry Act can help strengthen the Naira as well as reduce budget deficit is an economist, Dr. Taifa Abraham. You're welcome to Business Express.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, well, it's been long awaited. Now it has been assented by the president, and it's meant to transform the legal, governance, regulatory and fiscal landscape. What do you make of it?
Great. A lot of people have been engaging the Petroleum Industry Act, and that's been really wonderful to dissect the legal space and the regulatory innovation that the PIA brings to bear. And like you rightly pointed out, PricewaterhouseCoopers is among those group. You have Templars also doing their work, and then you have this UK-based firm, National Law Reform, doing a lot of people. I'm just trying to acknowledge that a lot of people have done work in this area. Yeah. But what we are looking forward to is to see the Petroleum Industry Act expand the investment space. You know, generally, it expands and restructures the corporate governance space that the petroleum sector has found that has been lacking in the petroleum sector for a long period of time. Now, basically, in the past, you have upstream sector, midstream, and downstream, everything muzzled up. But the Petroleum Industry Act made it very clear that companies right now, stakeholders, must separate their upstream operations from their midstream, from their downstream. Now, in petroleum economics, when you're looking at upstream, midstream, downstream, it looks reversed. The upstream is where you talk about exploration, extraction, anything that's to do with taking off the crude from the ground. Then the midstream is the process from extracting to transporting, storage, and processing, while the downstream is converting those final products to gasoline and other forms of finished product. So basically, the introduction of the PIA makes it very clear that the operations in this sector will now be separate, and then each sector will now have their own regulatory structure. Of course, it will be overseen by the minister, but the decisions to be taken by the minister will be advised by the board that represents each sector. That's the upstream, midstream, and downstream. So that's one major introduction that the PIA is bringing into. Take note, on the upstream, it also seeks to do some rejigging on the Department of Petroleum Resources and NNPC, which will now operate fully as a commercial entity. And that's where you see the Minister for Petroleum and the GMD, the group GMD of NNPC, has been on air recently, giving a lot of and dishing out a lot of news on how NNPC will now report its earnings, its audits, and stuff like that. So the whole idea is to make it very clear to investors that you can now access investment information about the petroleum sector in Nigeria, and watching the operations bottom line, you can now make rightful decision on when and how to invest, either upstream, midstream, or downstream.
But we're looking at the volatility of the oil prices. Why the focus on the oil sector? Why not the non-oil sector?
Oil sector still accounts for a large earning of our foreign earnings. And if you look at CBN's effort, I've always emphasized CBN will not let anybody sleep if the Naira is not doing well. CBN will not let any sector sleep if the inflation is not stable. CBN's mandate is that, to ensure price stability and keep our exchange rate stable and, if possible, improve in value. So now the concept is this: keeping keeping good watch on the petroleum, on oil prices still remains a very vital source of monitoring foreign earnings from crude oil. And earnings from crude oil, which the Petroleum Industry Act will improve, because investors will come in, like I earlier highlighted, upstream, midstream, downstream, all the activities will now be separate. and then you have a lot of investors coming in, and to attract a lot of foreign earnings to our country, which will pass through our foreign reserve and then increase inflow of the dollar or foreign earnings into our country. That is the pass-through to exchange rates, stability, and improving our foreign reserve so that the CBN can now have a better booster of the foreign reserve so that they can draw down to defend our naira when they need be. So watching crude oil price remains very vital. That's why if you go to CBN Act, CBN's website, I beg your pardon, one of the things you see on their snapshot data page is the exchange rate, crude oil price, monetary policy rate, and inflation. These are key macroeconomic indices that we'll continue to watch in order to be able to understand the factors affecting our Nigeria's economy and how to curtail them. So crude oil price, very important to keep an eye on.
Okay, I thought addressing this issue of liquidity crisis has been addressed by the special drawing rights recently approved by the IMF.
Yeah, the IMF will continue to play its own role as the international CBN, if I may use that word, the International Monetary Fund.
It seems like we're not taking advantage of special drawing rights.
Special drawing rights, it has its own advantage, but again, for IMF, it's about conditionalities and ensuring that you are on the right position to be able to access that drawing right. You must meet some certain criteria. But the key point is, it's important to keep an eye on crude oil price. And if you look at the Petroleum Industry Act, which I'm trying to keep my discussion on, it makes payment of royalty now to be sensitive to crude oil prices. So if crude oil price is below $50, 0% royalty for the upstream sector, mind you. If it's $100 per barrel, you have a royalty of 5%. Then if it's $150 per barrel, you have a royalty of 10%. Now, currently, if you check the CBN website, crude oil price is doing like $70-something per barrel. So meaning that we should be looking at anybody looking forward to get royalty from the upstream sector based on the PIA will not be getting anything based on this new price. Because for you to get that 5%, it must be around 100% and the rest. So what does that signal for investors? No more lazy source of just grabbing earnings from the crude oil sector. You must now be private sector driven. You must know how to plug into your investment and run after real investors so that revenues can be generated, so that we can now have more earnings from foreign earnings that will provide additional revenue for the federal government, improve our liquidity, and then overall reduce our deficit, which is the point that the PricewaterhouseCoopers and so many others are trying to point out from their report.
Okay, are we likely to see multiply effect in other sectors as well?
Yes, certainly. If you look at it within the context of a general equilibrium model, once you play with any economic variable, there's a spillover effect on all sectors. That's for sure. But for crude oil, the multiplier effect it's so transparent, it's so known that everybody in the Nigerian economy, from the market woman to the office guy to the person in the farm, knows that any adjustment in crude oil derivatives of price has spillover effect even on the price of broom and the price of everything. And if you look at the Petroleum Industry Act, it has carefully ensured that the fiscal regime it introduces in the petroleum industry is such that we are looking forward to get more revenue from taxes. It replaces the petroleum profit tax with hydrocarbon tax. In the past, company income tax is not applied to that sector, but now company income tax will be applied. Plus, there will be withholding tax on dividends that investors get. So as investors are getting their dividend, you pay the withholding tax, which is source of revenue again to the government. And there are other innovations again, like the tertiary education tax, which also come from the earnings. So you see, basically, you can see the multiplier effect spilling. So it comes from increase in revenue, and then you see this revenue translated even to host communities. And then there's also a part of the Petroleum Industry Act that provides for investment and activities in new frontiers, and overall just ensuring that the investment space for the petroleum sector expands.
Okay. Now, how do we take advantage of this, considering the fact that we still have subsidy? Subsidy has been taking a lot of money from Nigerians, and when we know that some of this oil has been diverted to other countries, can we still have PIA on the other side and we have subsidy? Is it possible?
Basically,
And how do we get the benefit?
Well, basically, in a market economics framework, subsidy is like it's like a roadblock. It's like a pothole. Market fundamentals we want you to take away subsidies so that prices will be freely determined, supply and demand interacting freely. But the whole political economy of subsidy is to ensure that any challenge experienced by key importers or players in any sector, agri, petroleum, any sector, any challenge they experience that increases their operation costs is being at least handled by the federal government, by the government, so that the bulk of the real price will not be transferred to the consumer, which you will find prices going high. This is the political economy of subsidy. Now, how well it is managed, it's something else. But I believe that the current administration, and not just the current administration, Nigeria, the argument about Nigerian economic management, from time past to today, have been doing their best to see how they can play safely with the fuel subsidy regime. But one thing I assure you, the IMF and other Bretton Woods institutions will not like that subsidy to go on, because for them it introduces shadow prices and makes for profit not to be real. So, but the bottom line is this: for Nigerians to take advantage of this Petroleum Industry Act, first of all, good knowledge about what the Petroleum Industry Act means for investors, consumers, and regulators is very important, which is part of what you are doing right now.
Okay, before I let you go, just briefly,
yeah, great.
The NNPC has just declared a profit after tax after like 44 years or so there. But what do you make of it?
That is part of the idea. In the past, you will not hear NNPC declaring profit, but now NNPC has declared profit. So that's a signal for investors. Okay, how viable is the NNPC business entity? In which sector should I go in? Upstream, midstream, downstream? How can I take advantage of this new space? So it's a whole lot. But bottom line, begin to see NNPC becoming more of a corporate governance entity. We begin to see the suit and ties replacing the agbadas, you know. Yeah. We begin to see audited accounting firms playing with NNPC report, and begin to see analysts looking at the bottom line in terms of profit and loss of the NNPC in order to see how they can invest. And also host communities will begin to see profits that are being reported and how much they expect to stay in terms of corporate social responsibility and contribution to the host communities.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. My pleasure. It's a lot. Thanks so much.
You on the program.
Thank you so much.
I'm talking to Dr. Tifa Abraham. It's a pleasure.
My pleasure always. Thank you.
Now moving on, the scarcity and hike in the price of plantain in recent times have been attributed to the rainy season, which is said to affect negatively the production of plantain. A former Ekoje who visited some local markets in Uyo, the Akwa Ibom state capital, reports that both consumers and sellers are lamenting the effects of the alarming increase in the price of plantain.
Plantain is fast becoming a staple food in Nigeria and a recommendation for some patients undergoing treatment for certain health issues. Plantain is also used for dietary purposes. This important food item, however, is becoming very scarce and expensive in local markets in Akwa Ibom State. Some consumers lament the increase in price of plantain. A bunch of plantain which sold for 2,000 now goes for 6,000 naira, while 5 fingers, which could be purchased at 400 naira, is now sold at 1,000 naira.
Before, where something is cheap, you can see a bunch of plantain of 1,000 naira, 800 naira. More increase is 1,500 or 2,000. But now you can buy a bunch of plantain of 6,000, 9,000 a bunch. So when you come, you will sell the plantain according to how you bought the plantain.
Some traders blame the hike in the price of these farm produce on the rainy season, which they say is not favorable for plantain production.
Yes, it's cost now because of the season.
Okay.
Yes, because of the season. That's why plantain cost. But from ending of September, it will come down. Then next year, from March next year to this time, plantain will be so hard because plantain will not be. This is raining season. But when this is dry season, you will see plantain.
And also, people are now selfish these days. They want to increase their profit rates. So they don't really consider the people, the customers that are really buying. So they just want to make their own profit and they don't care. That's
new ones are just coming out from their stands, which means when there are enough in the market, the price should come down.
They, however, admit that patronage has not reduced as consumers still purchase plantain, both for personal and commercial purposes.
They see the buy. They see the buy. It's food, they see the buy.
they are still patronizing the plantain because apart from things are high in this country, the plantain is iron. People like it.
To make staple food items like plantain more affordable and available all year round, it is expected that cultivation should be increased. In Uyo, Ifoma Ihoje for business.
Gold farms on softer dollar. Investors await U.S. jobs data. Let's now take a trip to the commodities market. African Union member states will receive an additional 10 million doses of AstraZeneca and Pfizer COVID-19 vaccines over the next 3 months through a new partnership between the French government and the African Union. The vaccines will be allocated and distributed by the initiative known as the Africa Vaccine Acquisition Trust, AVAD, and the COVAX Global Vaccine Initiative. Next in our Surviving COVID-19 series is a graphic artist who is still thriving despite the threats of the Delta variant.
Surviving COVID-19 series is brought to you in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria.
Edward Joko. Yeah, I'm a graphic designer, I'm a printer, so I do signage, I do many things, I do anything art. Yeah, it affected me so hard because then there was no work, the plaza was locked, they locked everywhere, but thank God we survived it. Yeah, probably the business is going well because right now we are picking up here, getting our daily bread every day. Like I said earlier, we are keeping up every day, making sure we come out punctual. So definitely we have to go on with something. People are making demand. Like you can see, we are always busy here. We do a lot of work here. We do signage. We do have anything printing, anything arts. We do it here. Before the COVID-19 period of time, yeah, I can say I don't really have much then, but I thank God that I managed to cope then. So this will be not easy then, but we survived it. So you know, here in Nigeria, loan is very difficult to collect because before you have to give you loan, you have to have the collateral, you have to have something tangible for you to collect before they can loan you money here. I applied seriously. Yeah, I have a lot in my mind to do, like I can open a shop if I'm to have the money now. There's machine that we use here that I don't have. So if I'm opportune to have that money, I'll be able to purchase the machine. And with the machine, I'll be very okay within myself. I'll be self-employed within myself.
Surviving COVID-19 series is brought to you in partnership with the Central Bank of
Chinese stocks drop as data shows China's factory activity growth slowed in August.
Investors on the global scene will be looking at the latest data out of China that showed slowing Chinese factory activities growth in August. In mainland China, the Shanghai Composite inched up 0.21%. Hong Kong's brother Hang Seng Index gained 0.81%. In Japan, the Nikkei rose 1.08%, while Topix Index advanced 0.32%. European stocks are expected to open lower on Tuesday with investors digesting the latest economic data from the region and beyond. London FTSE is seen opening 26 points higher at 7,148, while Germany's DAX down 28 points and CAC 40 of France also pointing down 14 points. In the US, the markets are opening slowly this morning but yet to post numbers numbers. Stock futures rose slightly in overnight trading on Monday as the S&P 500 looks to wrap up its 7th straight month of gains at record high. African markets are also opening on a quiet note this Tuesday, but expected to cancel the losses of Monday in the last trading day of August. Bossade Ebo, Business Express.
Now that wraps this edition of Business Express. Remember to keep in touch with us, so do send in your comments, observations and suggestions. Also be informed that all previous episodes are available on YouTube on the NTA's channel. Business Express returns Wednesday at 3 p.m. Be safe out there.